This is going to be a very easy section for you because we've already done this in section 1. The only difference is instead of an equation, you have an inequality, which means we're going to still draw the parabola with the lines, but they might be dashed or solid lines depending on what the symbol is. And we also will have some shading going on here. You are going to want to use your graphing calculator. This will make it very easy for you to do. If not, you're going to have to resort back to the old way of making your X and Y chart or doing the negative b over 2a formula that we used in the very beginning of this chapter. So here we have y is more than or equal to x squared plus 3x minus 4. Right here, you'll notice this is the inequality. Okay, so in algebra, we learned that anything pointing in this direction is a greater than or equal to. And these are all going to be shaded above the graph. And the only difference between these two is whether it's dotted or a solid line when you actually draw your graph. When you have the solid line underneath of the symbol, this will have a solid line on the graph. And if there is no solid line, then this will be dotted. So those are a few things to remember from algebra. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my y equals in my calculator, and I'm going to plug in, instead of worrying about this symbol here, I'm just going to plug it in like normal. So I have x squared plus 3x minus 4. And I'm going to hit the graph button, and there's my graph. Now, if you want to, it would be a good idea to go to your the table of values so you can make sure you get some of the points correct. So now you want to go to second graph to get that table. And you want to scroll through the list to see where the lowest point is or the highest point. And I'm showing on here that it looks like the lowest point is in the negatives, and that would be right at negative 6.25. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm looking at on my calculator. And if your calculator doesn't go up by 0.5s, remember to go to second window for that table set, and you can change that little triangle with TBL after it, change it to 0.5, and you should be all set. And then you can go back to your table. So what I'm looking at is I have negative 2.5, negative 2, negative 1.5, negative 1, and so on. And over here, I have negative 5.25, negative 6, negative 6.25, and then negative 6 again, and then negative 5.25 again. So you can tell the U ends right at this point. So that is the min. So over here in my graph, I'm going to go ahead and do negative 1.5 and then down 6.25, which will be a little off my graph. So there is the min. And now if you look at your graph, just hit the graph, you can kind of tell where the intercepts are. And mine looks like 1, 0. And it also looks like negative 4, 0. And because this is a sketch, you know, if it's somewhere really close to what your graph shows, the only point that you really need to get is the min or the max down here. So I'm just going to connect this, and it is a solid line. And it's a solid line because it has that symbol right there. And now we just have to shade it. So if we have a more than, it's going to be shaded above this U, So I'm going to shade. Get the color here. Make this a little bigger. All in here. And there's your graph. So if I asked you of a solution of this inequality, if it's 0, 0, which would be right here, it is in the shaded region, so it is a solution. Anything outside of the shaded region, such as 4, -3, that would not be a solution. Not a solution. All right, we're going to try another one here. So we're going to go back to our y equals, and we're going to clear it out. And we're going to punch in -2x squared, and we're going to hit graph. Now this one I really don't think I need to go to my table because I can tell exactly where the min or the max is. And my graph looks like this. Now, I did a solid line, but am I right? Because we get into the habit of always drawing solid lines, but you got to make sure. That symbol has the line underneath, so yes, I do need a solid line. But instead of being greater than, it's a less than. So we're going to shade below this U. And now you got to think about this U. Below it would be all inside here. So everything underneath of this U gets shaded, and there's your graph. See how these go really quickly with your graphing calculator? All right, let's try another one here. So clear out your y equals, and we're going to punch in x squared minus 5x plus 4 and hit graph. Now this time I need to go to the table. So I'm going to go to second table. And I'm gonna go ahead and get my intercepts. So I'm looking at this table in my calculator. Anywhere that it says 0 for y. So I'm gonna scroll up and down until I find a 0, and I found one already. So I have a 0 for y is when x is 1. So there's one of the intercepts. So right here. And I'm going to keep scrolling so I can get the other one. And I found it again at 4, 0. And now I just need to get my the max or the min, which I'm showing. I have 1.5, and of course I'm going by 0.5s. If you couldn't find it, just switch your table, delta table, so that you can tell where it is. Squeeze in 3.5 here. All right, and my values over here are negative 1.25. So you can see it repeats itself from this point. So negative 2, negative 1.250, negative 2, negative 1.250. Because the U is a mere reflection of each other, we folded it in half. So this is the min or the max, and of course this will have a min because the U is going up. So at 2.5 here, we're going to go down to negative 2.25, sorry. And we'll just estimate it to be right there. Now on the graph, I mean, you could have looked at this and you might not have been able to tell it was 2.25. So you always want to double check that. And now we just need to make sure, do we need to connect this with a solid or a dotted line? And if you look at that symbol, it has the solid line underneath of it. So we're going to connect it with a solid line. And we are going to shade below it because this is a less than sign. Now below this U would be all underneath of it. And now you're completed. You're complete with the problem. All right, now you're going to graph a system of inequalities. So instead of there just being one inequality, there might be two. And we're just going to do the same exact thing, but instead of darkening one area underneath one of the graphs, we're going to have solutions that are going to meet both inequalities. And I'll show you what I mean here. So the first thing I want to do is go to my y equals and clear it out. And we're going to do the first graph. So we have x squared. Okay, and I'm going to label this right here red because you'll understand when you go to do your graphs, if you put them in both at the same time, you'll get the two graphs, but you won't know where to shade. So I'm going to label the first one red, push graph, and I'm going to just sketch this. So we're going to have 0, 0, and this is a solid line. There's a sketch of the first one. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my y equals, and I'm going to go down to y2 and plug in the next one. So we have x squared plus 3. And this is going to be green. And I'm going to hit my graph, and I notice that I have same looking graph, but up 3. And this one is solid as well. Haven't had a dotted one yet. And now we need to figure out where to shade these. Now in Algebra 1, I let you shade both areas, and then I really wanted you to darken the area that both inequalities met with like a pencil or a black colored pencil. So this time I want you to be better at just darkening only the area that needs to be darkened. So here we have the red line. This one is more than. So if we go to our red line, it's going to be above this, so all in here. Okay, and if we look at the green line, it's less than, so it's going to be below the green line. So all of the solutions have to be above the red, and actually I'm going to shade it a different color, above the red, but stay below the green. So these are all of the solutions that meet both inequalities. So we just go ahead and keep filling this in until we get it all darkened. And there it is. Now you may want to use two colored pencils or maybe a pen and a pencil when you do the two equations on this to help you. You just make sure you label which ones you did so that you know which one is above or which one is below.